Mexico, a country rich in history, culture, and natural beauty. Also home to one of my closest friends. So I figured it was about time that I made my first trip to Latin America, visiting the Morelos region of Mexico and Mexico City. Join me as I explore as much as I can over the course of a week. Viva Mexico!
I've landed in Mexico City after a flight of about 5 hours with Delta from JFK in New York. I'm feeling pretty lucky because the seat next to me and between me and the other guy was empty, and I could stretch out a little bit on the flight, which was clutch. It was an early start to the day with only a few hours of sleep, so I'm feeling pretty tired and hungry. Didn't get an opportunity to eat too much, but the travel day isn't over yet. I have to find the airport bus terminal, which I think is just over yonder, and get a bus to Cuernavaca in the Morelos state region. So that drive can be anywhere from 1 hour to 2.5 hours pending traffic. So hoping I can get on the right bus and also make sure I get off at the right stop, because that would be amazing.
It was actually easier than I thought finding the bus terminal at the airport. It was a comfortable ride that even included a complimentary Boeing fruit-flavored beverage. The bus ride ended up taking over 2 hours because of dense traffic leaving the Mexico City area. With a Spanish-dubbed version of Sonic the Hedgehog playing in the background, I spent most of the time looking out the window to soak in my first sights of Mexico. I was looking forward to the next few days of adventures and, of course, meeting up with my friend Anna, who I had originally met in New York City, where we both worked for the same company before she moved back to Mexico. After a fun reunion and meeting some new friends the evening before, we all slept in and had a lazy morning before piling into the car for the hour or so drive to Las Estacas Natural Park, making only a quick pit stop to pick up some picnic essentials. Try saying that 3 times fast.
So I'm here in Las Estacas, which is a natural park in the Morelos region of Mexico. So it's this really beautiful park. It's more for recreation than anything else. There's a winding river that cuts through the entire park where you can jump in at the beginning or go in with any kind of like raft or floating device. And then there's a bit of a current that takes you all the way down. So we got in and it was about probably at least a 30-35 minute swim down to where we had our stuff, and there's at least another quarter or more of the park to go. So pretty long, and you're swimming the entire time because of the current. So it's a really good workout. So really, really great day. It's beautiful, it's lush, it's very well taken care of, very well manicured park. There's also pools, there's a hotel, there's a bunch of activities, there's scuba diving. There's a lot of families here, a lot of couples, a lot of groups of friends. Definitely a really fantastic place to go, and it's my first full day in Mexico, and I think it was a great start to it. Get a little bit of naturing, get a little bit of R&R in as well. So just really enjoyable overall.
Not a bad first day in Mexico, right? After getting my tropical vibes on and being pleasantly physically drained after a day in the sun with diving and swimming, it was time for us to make the trip back home and prepare for the next day's excursion. Leaving a bit earlier in the morning, we made the drive over to Tepoztlan, a charming town and popular weekend destination for Chilangos or Mexico City dwellers. I understood the appeal once we started walking through the cobblestone streets and saw the picturesque vista of the mountains and cliffs rising above the colorful town.
Alright, so I'm here in Tepoztlan, which is one of the magic towns in Mexico because of its cultural significance and natural beauty. And I'm walking up what's about to be an hour and a half long hike to Tepozteco, which is an old pyramid to one of the ancient deities. Whew. It's gonna be a workout.
Something worth pointing out, other than my awesome hat purchased from a market vendor in town, is that I was the only one from our group to take on the hike. The others had opted for a relaxing day of massages and tarot card readings. How rude.
Oh my god. This is never ending. Oh my god, I can feel my heart in my throat. It's just steps, steep steps the entire way. Alright, finally made it to the temple. That was quite the hike. I'm exhausted, and I have to do it all again in reverse going down. So, not looking forward to that. But it's beautiful up here.
The mountaintop pyramid of Tepozteco is said to be a focal point of mystical energy and a place of spiritual importance. While I unfortunately didn't experience any spiritual or energetic shifts, it was personally gratifying to have made the hike up and then get to see firsthand and touch a real Aztec pyramid. It was dedicated to the Aztec god of fertility, drunkenness, and the alcoholic beverage pulque, Tepoztecatl, and attracted pilgrims from as far as present-day Guatemala. I wouldn't mind being invited to one of his parties. After admiring the temple and views of Tepoztlan, I encountered some local coati, adorable members of the raccoon family, and denizens of this mountain range. Once I felt sufficiently recovered, I made the hike back down to meet up with Anna and our group. Having barely survived the walk down after slipping and almost taking out an attractive young lady in front of me, I should have tried to get her number since she swept me off my feet, I made it back to town. We were limited on time, no massages or tarot readings for me, so strolled through the streets admiring the buildings and open markets with fresh produce and various wares on display. We did make a quick stop to enjoy elotes and esquites, delicious corn-based street food treats before heading back home. After a day of international travel and 2 days of excursions and adventures, a rest day was very much needed. Luckily, we had a plunge pool in Anna's backyard and larger pool in the housing complex available to us that did the trick before the next day's trip to Mexico City.
So after a day of relaxation in Cuernavaca, we made the journey about an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes to Mexico City, where I got out at my bed and breakfast, La Palomina. And from there I went out, explored the surrounding town of Condesa a little bit. I think I might have crossed into Roma Norte. Had dinner at this place called Contramar. Really good seafood. Very, very tasty. Prices were basically like New York City prices, so it is on the more expensive side. And then from there, had an early night. And this morning, had breakfast, met some of the other guests at the bed and breakfast, and now I'm heading out to a cooking class, which is exciting. So hoping to meet a few other travelers, cook some tasty, authentic Mexican food, learn how to do it, maybe learn some of the traditions and history of the cuisine.
I found the cooking class through Airbnb experiences as a last-minute addition to my plans in Mexico City. I wanted something food-related that also gave me a chance to learn more about the culture and history of Mexico. This class did just that, as it was based out of La Prosperidad Loncheria, just a few blocks away from my bed and breakfast in the Roma Norte neighborhood. Restaurant owner Vanessa led us through a culinary and cultural history of domestic produce like peppers, tomatoes, and corn before we got a chance to create our own salsas and guacamole. We then hand-made traditional corn-based tortillas, pressing before cooking. With some fillings handy, we then made quesadillas, bean sopes, and more with fresh local ingredients. It was a really interesting, rewarding, and fulfilling experience with an emphasis on the filling. Next on the itinerary was visiting the famous canals of Xochimilco, about an hour away from where I was staying in Roma Norte. As we approached the town center, a young man on a bicycle representing one of the canal boat companies rode up to our car while we were stopped at a red light. He offered to direct us to the company's dock, which we took him up on. I do want to point out this was Anna's idea. What followed was essentially a car chase through the streets of Xochimilco, mostly entertaining, but at times anxiety-inducing as we were led the opposite way on one-way streets and lost our sense of direction as we followed our guide. We may have shared a few jokes about getting kidnapped, but we ultimately made it safely to the gondolas. The canals in Xochimilco are the last remnants of the canal system that covered a large portion of Mexico City as the lake area was filled in to create more land to farm and live on. Xochimilco is sometimes called the floating gardens for this reason, as rafts were sunk to the lake bottom to build the base of the farmland or gardens. Today, the area is used for joyrides along the boats, or more accurately barges called trajineras that are pushed through the canal by trajineros using long poles much like gondolas. The area is especially popular on weekends as the trajineras turn into private boat parties. We went on a weekday, so we were able to relax with some cervezas and enjoy the cooler temperature out on the water. After our pleasure cruise, we stopped at La Coyoacana in the Coyoacan neighborhood for drinks and dinner to end another fun-filled day.
Good morning. I fueled up on kava and this really delicious pastry that had guayaba and cheese in it. Oh my god, so good. Still thinking about it. And I'm fueled up, ready, energized for exploring Bosque de Chapultepec. So walking around the park now, just entered, going to see some of the sights, going to see the Castillo, and then going to the Anthropology Museum. So that's most of my day planned out. Grab some lunch on the way back to the bed and breakfast before a fun activity that I have planned for later in the afternoon. So looking forward to today, chill day of exploring. It's pretty warm out, but it's a very forested park, so it should be good.
The Chapultepec forest has a long history going back 3,000 years. Originally on the outskirts of the city, today it is completely surrounded by the urban center of Mexico City. The rocky hill was especially significant and was a place of worship and residence for Aztec rulers, followed by the Spanish building a chapel and then summer palace. The palace was rebuilt into a castle, but more on that in a moment. Today, the 1,700-acre park contains museums, a zoo, amusement park, and multiple recreational spaces, continuing its importance to Mexico City and making it the oldest and largest urban park in Latin America. The Castillo de Chapultepec is an 18th century building sitting atop the park's highest point. Construction originally began in 1785 for the Spanish crown ruler of the territory, but wasn't completed until after Mexico won its independence in 1821. In 1833, it was assigned as a military training academy and became the site of the Battle of Chapultepec during the Mexican-American War in 1847. The castle would become the imperial residence of Emperor Maximilian of Habsburg in 1864 before being turned over to Mexico's presidents in 1882. Chapultepec Castle is one of the only two palaces in North America and the only castle of those two to have housed any royalty. Today, the castle is home to Mexico's National History Museum. It has been beautifully maintained and has sweeping views of the city from its terraces and vantage points, along with its own lovely rooftop garden. After spending some time here, I moved on to another museum within the park, the National Museum of Anthropology. The Museo Nacional de Antropologia contains the world's largest collection of ancient Mexican art and ethnographic exhibits of present-day indigenous groups. The museum is organized to show the development of Central Mexican culture that culminated in the Aztec Empire. The Aztec or Mexica exhibit holds important sculptures, with the most notable being the famous Aztec calendar or sunstone. There are also sections of the museum devoted to other cultural areas in Mexico, with focuses on groups like the Oaxaca and Maya. The recreations of tombs and other structures, indoors and outdoors, help provide additional context and were a very nice touch. While I wasn't too interested in the pottery and miscellaneous items displayed, I found the recreations of pre-Hispanic buildings and city layouts to be fascinating. If you're looking to be more deeply immersed in the history of Mexico, the Anthropology Museum is a must visit. Now, I was starting to feel pretty hungry, so I had to prepare for my late afternoon activity and skedaddled and made my way over to Taqueria Selene right outside the park for the best al pastor of the whole trip.
Alright, so the fun activity I have planned is to do some training at CMLL. So I'm here at the Arena Mexico. So that should be pretty fun. So a little bit of a cultural experience, a little bit of a wrestling experience. Granted, you know, this might not be for everyone. I do have about 7 years of pro wrestling experience back in the US. So this is kind of like a bucket list item on the pro wrestling list. Alright, let's find this place.
A few moments later.
Alright, so we got back from training. It was a dope experience. Though it was difficult. And I was able to jump into training with El Dragoncito, Ultimo Dragoncito. So I was able to do that. It was a really cool experience. The guys there were very welcoming. It was tough. It was tough. One, because Lucha Libre is different from normal professional wrestling. So we use like a different side of the body and everything, and just the style is different. Also, I'm going to blame the altitude, although it's probably because I'm just a bit more out of shape than I thought I was. But I got winded super quick, and I was like sucking air. It was tough. But also just being in a position where I speak broken Spanish, I know un poquito. I was able to work through just like with sign language basically, and different body movements, and I was able to actually go through and do everything. They were super patient, super helpful with me, and so it was definitely a challenge, but having gone through it and being on the other side is a really cool experience. I'm really grateful for that. But now I'm hungry and I kind of wanted just some comfort food. So I stopped at this place close to the not Airbnb, it's a bed and breakfast, La Burguesa, and I'm just ordering a burger, shake, and fries, because what else are you gonna do? I need to replenish a little bit. I'd say I wasn't able to take any videos, it just wasn't the right move. Maybe if I was going more often, I could take some. Being that it was my first time there, I was only there for an hour and a half. There were just, you know, the language difficulties and things like that. Me asking them to like stop and take videos of me wasn't the move. So I don't have any video footage, but I do have a group class photograph and a photo of Arena Mexico, which I can share. And then tomorrow's my last full day, so tomorrow should be exciting. And that's it. Today's been a pretty cool day. It's another beautiful day here in Mexico City. It's also my last full day visiting Mexico City and the country of Mexico, flying out tomorrow. Started off the day sore from last night's wrestling training, but in good spirits. I slept in a little bit, stayed in a little bit, and then went to Panaderia Rosetta, which is supposed to be a really popular bakery pastry shop. And boy, was it ever. It was packed to the gills with people. 40-minute plus wait for a table for just one person. And there was a long line to order something to take out, which I ended up opting in to do. For better or for worse, it's a very touristy spot. Most of the people there were tourists. I heard a lot of Americans talking, including me. My eyes were bigger than my belly, and I ended up ordering 5 different pastries, 3 of which I quickly consumed in the nearby park, which is where we're at right now. It's a beautiful park. There's a fountain back there. And also had a cafe mocha, Probably the most delicious cafe mocha I've ever had. The chocolate richness was really evident. But now my tummy doesn't feel too good from all the pastries. But anyways, Anna's on her way. She's gonna pick me up and we're gonna head to Palacio de Bellas Artes and just have like a chill day of just exploring. Later on today, tonight rather, 8:30 p.m., we're going to an actual CMLL Lucha Libre show at Arena Mexico, which should be fun. And then just kind of see where the night takes us. So should be a chill, cool last day in Mexico. I'm a bit concerned because somehow someone has found a molding of my butt and stuck it on this statue. And I didn't consent to that. I feel like I should be getting paid royalties or something.
The Palacio de Bellas Artes, or Palace of Fine Arts, has been a cultural center in Mexico City for the last 90 years. Completed in 1934, it's a beautiful example of neoclassical and Art Deco architecture, according to Google. It houses a large theater, concert hall, the National Museum of Architecture, and the Museum of the Palace of Fine Arts. You can find murals painted throughout by some of Mexico's most renowned artists like José Clemente Orozco, Roberto Montenegro, and of course the legendary Diego Rivera. Walking through the museum exhibits was a wonderful experience as there were multiple examples of contemporary Mexican art and photography. While the contemporary modern art was interesting to see, I found myself more drawn to the murals and especially the black and white photography exhibits featuring the work of various Mexican photographers. The Palacio is definitely worth a visit though, and I do wish I had the chance to see the theater and concert hall.
All right, so we're walking in downtown area, but Anna, can you explain a little bit more?
No, I cannot.
What are we doing? Where we're going?
To the Zocalo.
To the Zocalo.
The main square
Okay.
of Mexico City.
And this area right now, like what is it?
One of the main streets, the downtown. One of the main streets to the square. And there are a lot of shops and a lot of people. And
I didn't notice that before.
yeah, no, there are also some trees and stores. Very different than unique for Mexico.
It's very much. You're doing great.
Yeah, thank you.
The Plaza de la Constitución is the heart of Mexico City and is referred to by residents as the Zocalo. They were preparing for an outdoor concert when we passed by, but the square is massive and is one of the largest city squares in the world. The plaza is surrounded by the Presidential Palace, the Metropolitan Cathedral, and city government offices. Off to the side of the square, near the remains of Templo Mayor, you can find dancers performing authentic dances from the Aztec period done in colorful attire. You can also find spiritual cleanses done in the traditional manner. It's a really interesting juxtaposition to find these acts in remembrance of the indigenous Aztec culture among the more modern sights and sounds around the square, and I think it speaks to the current state of Mexican culture as many seem to seek and try to reclaim their lost indigenous heritage. Speaking of Templo Mayor, before being demolished by the Spaniards and replaced with the Metropolitan Cathedral, the great Aztec temple Teocalli of Tepoztlan stood proudly at this site. The temple is thought to have been built on the spot where the Aztecs saw their symbolic eagle perching on a cactus with a snake, signifying the center of the universe. The temple was enlarged several times as Aztec rulers sought to show the strength of their rule and of the empire. After the destruction by the Spaniards, the remains were left covered until 1978, when electricity workers came across the carving of an Aztec goddess, and it was decided that colonial buildings needed to be demolished for excavating Templo Mayor. The excavations are ongoing, with additional discoveries over the last 10 years, including sacrificial burial sites and more.
I'm literally walking through history right now. It's pretty cool. I'm glad that they were able to preserve as much as possible.
I learned about pulque while in Tepoztlan, the fermented sap of agave that can be turned into an alcoholic drink that supposedly has some nutritional qualities. We stopped by Pulqueria Las Duelistas, which had a bit of a dive bar vibe to it, to try some of this naturally flavored pulque. Now, pulque has about the same potency as beer, and so we mostly tasted the flavor. Given its deep history in Mexican culture, I'd say it's worth a try.
In an unexpected turn of events, it started raining here in Mexico City. We're thinking it's a good thing for drought reasons, but a bit uncomfortable. Also, white t-shirt contest.
The rain started letting up, of course, after we got into the safety of the car, but we took the scenic road back to Roma Norte by driving down Reforma and seeing the beautiful statues, sculptures, and architecture, new and old, of downtown Mexico City. Our next stop would be a seafood dinner at La Corriente Cevicheria Naiz before going to Arena Mexico.
Buen provecho!
The roads were jammed with cars and people leading into the entrance of Arena Mexico, a stark contrast to how empty the area felt when I came by for training a few days before. Once in, we made our way to the seats and grabbed some tasty refreshments and prepared to enjoy the show. It was a very cool experience for me to watch and enjoy the spectacle of CMLL Lucha Libre, especially knowing just a few days earlier I had trained within these same walls. Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre was founded in 1933 and is the oldest professional wrestling promotion still in existence. Even the arena has legendary status, known as the Cathedral of Lucha Libre. The arena steadily filled as the night went on, culminating with a loud and lively crowd that was receptive to every maneuver. Given my personal connection to professional wrestling, enjoying a spectacular Friday night CMLL show with friends was the perfect way to end the evening and my week in Mexico.
It's the last morning of my stay here in Mexico City. And in Mexico, I just checked out, so just hanging out on the terrace. This past week has been a really interesting one, full of adventure. Being able to connect with Anna again and some other friends here in Mexico has been really great. Usually I travel on my own and I get to meet some people in the destinations I go to, but actually going to a place where there is a friend that I want to reconnect with and other friends, and being able to have some alone time to explore, but then also having time to explore with friends is something I feel like I've been missing out on these last couple of years. So that's been a really joyful experience for me that I really appreciate. As far as the experience itself, the city, the country, it really is a beautiful place with beautiful people. I'm not going to lie, Mexico was never really in my top 3 or 5 places to visit. I mostly came to see my friend Anna and spend some time with her, and I figured why not? And similar to some other trips I've taken with kind of that why not attitude, they end up being really, really fun. And I think it's maybe coming in with no real expectations or just this open-minded sense of adventure and wonderment of just, we'll see where the journey takes us. I'm really glad I was able to visit and experience the culture in Cuernavaca, going to Tepoztlan, and of course in Mexico City, just getting more of that urban life and style, staying in these really beautiful neighborhoods, getting Lucha Libre training at CMLL, going to an actual show. It's just really been a great adventure, and I feel like I've ticked off a ton of boxes, especially for a first trip to a country, a first trip to Mexico City. It's been really wonderful. But that's a beautiful thing, I think, with travel, is that you really get to see different worlds, see different cultures, and also realize just how similar everyone is, despite language differences, despite physical appearance differences, despite cultural differences. At the end of the day, people are people, and this was a joy. This was not something I was expecting to do. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I had the experiences I had this week. I'm glad I got to catch up with dear friends and make some new ones. And looking forward to the next adventure after getting some rest back at home.